Hey there, beautiful soul. I need to ask you something really important. When was the last time you truly forgave yourself for a mistake you made? I mean, really, genuinely let yourself off the hook, instead of carrying that heavy weight of guilt and shame around like a backpack full of rocks. If you're struggling to answer that question, you're absolutely not alone. Most of us are walking around with years of accumulated resentment, not just toward others, but toward ourselves. And here's what nobody talks about. This invisible burden is quietly sabotaging every area of your life. Today we're going to explore something that could completely transform how you experience relationships, stress, and your own inner peace. We're talking about radical forgiveness and self-compassion. Not the fluffy, surface-level stuff you might have heard before, but the deep, life-changing practices that actually work. By the end of this video, you'll have practical tools that can shift your entire emotional landscape. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Forgiveness sounds nice in theory, but what about when someone really hurt you? What about when you've messed up so badly that you can't even look at yourself in the mirror? We're going to address all of that. This isn't about becoming a doormat or pretending everything is okay when it's not. This is about freeing yourself from the prison of resentment and self-hatred. Let me start with a story that might sound familiar. Sarah came to me completely exhausted. She was successful on paper, had a good job, nice apartment, but she felt empty inside. Every morning she woke up with this heavy feeling in her chest. She couldn't figure out why she felt so drained all the time. As we talked, something interesting emerged. Sarah was carrying around grudges from years ago. Her ex-boyfriend who cheated on her 3 years back. Her sister, who didn't invite her to an important family event. Her parents, who never seemed to understand her choices. But here's the kicker. The heaviest burden wasn't what others had done to her. It was what she couldn't forgive herself for. The time she lost her temper with her nephew. The business opportunity she was too scared to take. The relationship she sabotaged because she didn't feel worthy of love. Sarah was her own worst enemy, and she didn't even realize it. Sound familiar? If you're nodding along, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're going to go deep into exactly how to break free from this pattern. And don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss content that could change your life. Here's what most people don't understand about forgiveness. It's not about the other person. It never was. Forgiveness is about setting yourself free. When you hold on to resentment, you're essentially drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. But here's the thing that really blew my mind when I first learned it. The same principle applies to self-forgiveness, except it's even more toxic because you can't escape from yourself. Think about it this way. Your brain is like a computer, and resentment is like a virus that's constantly running in the background. It's using up your mental energy, slowing down your processing power, and preventing you from accessing your full potential. Every time you replay that argument, every time you beat yourself up for a past mistake, you're feeding that virus more power. The science backs this up completely. Research shows that people who practice forgiveness have lower stress hormones, better immune function, and significantly better mental health outcomes. But self-forgiveness, that's where the real magic happens. Studies indicate that people who can forgive themselves show greater resilience, better problem-solving abilities, and stronger relationships across the board. Now let's talk about what radical forgiveness actually looks like. This isn't about saying it's okay when someone hurts you. It's not about pretending the pain doesn't exist or rushing to move on before you've processed what happened. Radical forgiveness is about understanding that holding on to anger and resentment is like holding onto a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You're the one getting burned. The first step in radical forgiveness is acknowledging the full impact of what happened. Most of us try to minimize our pain or rush through the healing process. We tell ourselves we should be over it by now. We compare our healing timeline to others. This is where self-compassion becomes absolutely crucial. Self-compassion has 3 main components, and understanding these will revolutionize how you treat yourself. The first is self-kindness. This means talking to yourself the way you would talk to your best friend going through a difficult time. Would you tell your best friend they're stupid for making a mistake? Would you remind them of every failure they've ever had when they're already down? Of course not. So why do we think it's acceptable to treat ourselves that way? The second component is common humanity. This is recognizing that struggle, pain, and making mistakes is part of the human experience. You're not uniquely flawed. You're not the only person who has ever messed up. When you realize that your struggles connect you to every other human being rather than separate you from them, something beautiful happens. The shame starts to dissolve. The third component is mindfulness. This means observing your thoughts and feelings without getting completely swept away by them. Instead of, I am such a failure, it becomes, I'm having the thought that I'm a failure. This small shift creates space between you and your thoughts, which is where healing begins. Let me share something that completely changed my perspective on forgiveness. I used to think forgiveness was this grand gesture, like flipping a switch and suddenly feeling peace about everything that had hurt me. But real forgiveness is more like tending a garden. You don't plant seeds and expect flowers the next day. You water them consistently. You pull the weeds, you're patient with the process. Here's a practical exercise that can start shifting things immediately. Think of someone you're holding resentment toward. Don't pick the most traumatic situation right away. Start with something smaller, like a friend who canceled plans last minute, or a colleague who took credit for your idea. Now, instead of focusing on what they did wrong, I want you to focus on how carrying this resentment is affecting your life. How much mental energy does this take up? How often do you think about it? How does your body feel when you replay the situation? Notice that the person who hurt you might be living their life completely unaffected while you're the one suffering. This isn't about making excuses for their behavior. This is about recognizing that your resentment is only hurting you. Now, here's where it gets interesting. That same exercise applies to self-forgiveness, but it's often much harder. We can sometimes forgive others more easily than we forgive ourselves. Why is that? Because we know our own intentions. We know every thought we had, every choice we made. We see our mistakes in high definition, while we only see snapshots of other people's lives. If you're finding value in this and you want to go deeper into transforming your relationship with yourself, make sure you're subscribed, because I share practical tools like this every week. Also, if you know someone who really needs to hear this message about forgiveness and self-compassion, please share this video with them. Sometimes we need permission to be kind to ourselves, and your sharing might be exactly what someone needs today. Let's talk about what blocks us from forgiving ourselves. One of the biggest obstacles is the belief that self-forgiveness means we're letting ourselves off the hook. We think that if we stop punishing ourselves, we might make the same mistake again. But here's what research actually shows. Self-compassion makes us more likely to take responsibility for our actions, not less. When we're not busy defending our ego or drowning in shame, we can actually see our mistakes clearly and learn from them. Another major block is perfectionism. Perfectionists often have this all-or-nothing thinking. Either they're completely good or completely bad. Either they succeed perfectly or they're a total failure. This black and white thinking makes self-forgiveness nearly impossible because it doesn't allow for the gray areas where real humans actually live. Here's a truth that might feel uncomfortable at first. You are going to make mistakes for the rest of your life. You're going to hurt people you care about sometimes. You're going to fall short of your own expectations. You're going to have moments where you don't show up as your best self. This isn't a character flaw. This is being human. The question isn't whether you'll make mistakes. The question is how quickly you can learn from them and get back to living authentically. Self-forgiveness is what allows this rapid recovery. Without it, we get stuck in shame cycles that can last for months or even years. Let me walk you through a powerful process for self-forgiveness that I've seen work miracles in people's lives. First, we need to get specific about what you're actually forgiving yourself for. Vague guilt doesn't heal well. Instead of I'm a bad person, we need to identify the specific action or choice. I lost my temper with my child when I was stressed about work. Second, we acknowledge the impact. How did this action affect others? How did it affect you? Be honest here, but don't exaggerate. Stick to the facts of what actually happened, not the story your inner critic is telling you about what it means about your character. Third, take responsibility without self-attack. This sounds like, I made a choice that hurt my child and created distance between us, rather than, I'm a terrible parent who always screws everything up. Do you notice the difference? One acknowledges the specific harm, while the other attacks your entire identity. Fourth, make amends where possible. This might mean apologizing to someone you hurt, but it definitely means changing your behavior going forward. Real self-forgiveness includes a commitment to doing better, not because you're terrible if you don't, but because you care about the impact of your actions. Finally, treat yourself with the same compassion you'd show a good friend who made the same mistake. What would you say to them? How would you help them move forward? Now say those same things to yourself. Here's something beautiful that happens when you start practicing radical self-forgiveness. You become much more forgiving of others. It's like when you clean the lens on a camera. Suddenly, everything you see becomes clearer. When you're not constantly defending against your own shame, you have more capacity to understand other people's struggles. This brings us to forgiving others, which often becomes much easier once you've developed self-compassion. But there are still some important things to understand. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. You can forgive someone and still choose not to have them in your life. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. You can forgive and still maintain healthy boundaries based on past behavior. Forgiveness is about releasing the emotional charge around what happened. It's about no longer giving that person or situation power over your inner peace. Here's a technique that can help with this process. Write a letter to the person who hurt you. Don't send it. In this letter, express everything you felt, everything you wished you could say. Get it all out on paper. Then, write a second letter. This one is from your wisest, most compassionate self to the hurt part of you. What would that wise part want the hurt part to know? What comfort or perspective could it offer? This process helps you access your own inner wisdom instead of staying stuck in victim consciousness. Now, let's address something that comes up a lot. What about forgiving people who aren't sorry? What about forgiving yourself when you keep making the same mistakes? These are valid concerns, and they point to a deeper understanding of what forgiveness really is. Forgiveness isn't dependent on the other person's response. It's a gift you give yourself. When someone isn't sorry, your forgiveness doesn't excuse their behavior or mean you trust them again. It means you're choosing not to carry their toxicity in your own heart. You're choosing freedom over being right. As for forgiving yourself when you keep repeating patterns, this is where radical self-compassion becomes essential. Instead of, why do I keep doing this? I'm so stupid. Try, this pattern is showing me where I still need to heal. What is this behavior trying to protect me from? What do I need to learn or change to break this cycle? If you're getting insights from this approach to healing and personal growth, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button. It really helps other people discover this content who might need exactly this message today. And while you're at it, check out some of our other videos on emotional healing and personal transformation. The algorithm will actually show you more content like this if you engage. So you're helping yourself access more tools for your growth journey. Here's a practice that can transform your relationship with forgiveness. Every evening before you go to sleep, ask yourself these 3 questions. What do I need to forgive myself for today? What do I need to forgive others for today? What am I grateful for in my growth journey today? Don't overthink it. Just notice what comes up and offer yourself compassion for whatever emerges. You might notice resistance to this practice at first. Part of you might argue that you don't deserve forgiveness, or that forgiving others means you're weak. These are just thoughts, not truths. They're often voices from the past, maybe things you heard growing up, or beliefs you formed to protect yourself when you were younger. You can acknowledge these voices without letting them run your life. One of the most powerful shifts happens when you realize that forgiveness is not about them, it's about you. It's about reclaiming your energy, your peace, your power to create the life you actually want. Every moment you spend in resentment is a moment you're not available for joy, connection, creativity, or growth. This doesn't mean you become naive or stop protecting yourself. Healthy boundaries are still essential, but you can maintain boundaries from a place of self-love rather than from a place of fear and anger. When you forgive, you're not saying what you did was okay. You're saying, I'm not going to let what you did control my inner state anymore. Let's talk about what your life could look like with radical forgiveness and self-compassion as daily practices. Imagine waking up without that heavy feeling in your chest. Imagine being able to make mistakes without spiraling into shame. Imagine having conflicts with people you love without it threatening the entire relationship because you both know how to repair and reconnect. Imagine having the energy you currently spend on resentment available for pursuing your dreams, building meaningful relationships, and creating positive impact in the world. This isn't fantasy. This is what becomes possible when you commit to healing your relationship with forgiveness. Here's what I want you to understand about this journey. Healing isn't linear. You're going to have good days and hard days. You might forgive someone and then feel angry again the next week. That doesn't mean you're failing. That means you're human, and healing happens in layers. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small victories. Notice when you catch yourself being self-critical and gently redirect your thoughts. Notice when you feel resentment rising, and remember that you have a choice in how long you stay in that energy. The ripple effects of this work extend far beyond your personal healing. When you stop carrying resentment, you become more present with the people you love. When you practice self-compassion, you naturally extend more compassion to others. When you forgive, you model for others that healing is possible. Your children, your friends, your family, your community all benefit when you choose healing over holding grudges. You become a living example that transformation is possible, that people can change, that love is stronger than hurt. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with this truth. You are worthy of forgiveness, especially from yourself. You are worthy of compassion, especially from yourself. You are worthy of peace, joy, and love, not because you've earned it by being perfect, but because you exist. A journey of radical forgiveness and self-compassion isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. Every step you take toward healing yourself creates more healing in the world. Every moment of self-compassion contributes to a more compassionate world. Every act of forgiveness plants seeds of peace that will bloom in ways you might never even see. If this message resonated with you, I want to encourage you to take one small action today. Maybe it's writing in a journal about something you're ready to forgive. Maybe it's speaking to yourself with more kindness when you notice self-critical thoughts. Maybe it's simply deciding that you're worth the effort this healing requires. Remember to subscribe if you want more content about emotional healing, personal growth, and creating the life you truly want. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they're worthy of forgiveness and compassion. And most importantly, be gentle with yourself as you begin or continue this beautiful journey of healing. You've got this, and you're not walking this path alone.